All right, guys, we're here with the Turner's Outdoorsman podcast. Pretty excited today. This is one that I have been, and Gunnar and I have been talking about as we went through the schedule for what we were going to do with these podcasts. This one probably is one that has always been on the very, very tip top of my list, and that is a waterfowl hunting episode. And we are joined today by what I would consider one of the best duck hunters in California, Mr. Tim Baker.
Wow.
Tim, how you doing today?
We're doing great. Thanks for having me. What an introduction.
So obviously, a lot of people are new to who Tim Baker is. Tim Baker is a very neat guy. He has been around the Turner's Outdoorsman circle for many years, and we'll ask him, Tim, how many years ago did you start at the original Orange store?
It was actually, I started in the Anaheim store. Anaheim store, and that was in 81 or 2.
So 1981. So when the company was only like 10 years old, you started as like a part-time hunting guy?
No, actually, I started full-time right out of, I was still actually in high school, and that was back when it was still Andrews. So my first name badge was Andrews Sporting Goods.
So Tim Baker has been around a long time. When I started 29 years ago, Tim was working at the corporate level. He was doing a lot of different jobs, kind of merchandising, I think, at the time when I started. Then he was our tackle buyer for a lot of years, taught me a lot about that side of it. But one of the neatest things that I always remember about Tim is he was the first guy to ever get me involved in duck hunting. And I'd call him with questions all the time. He invited me. I think the first time we hunted was at the Splatter S Duck Club in Chino. And we're new to podcasts, but you guys have heard me talk a little bit on Instagram things. I've been hunting my whole life, big game hunting, a lot of mainly bow hunting. And I was kind of a bow hunting snob. When I started working at Turner's, I also fished a whole bunch. But I didn't really rifle hunt. I just pretty much bow hunted. And I'd see all these guys duck hunting, and I'm like, that's lame. Like, who wants to go out and shoot ducks? And I remember hanging out with some of the Turner's guys one time. We were fishing, and they're like, have you been duck hunting? I'm like, no, it looks dumb to me. It looks boring. I don't get it. And Tim got me out there one day, and I'll tell you what, it changed my life. You get addicted pretty quick to waterfowl hunting. I'd say in all the different kinds of hunting and fishing activities out there, the people that I've noticed, and even from a business perspective here at Turner's, the most loyal customers and hardcore guys are duck hunters and bow hunters. Those guys, I don't know what it is. They're always looking for, the new, neat, cool gear, always looking for the edge, something that's going to put more game on the table in the end of the day. It's always been a thing. Like duck hunting guys, they buy better ammo. They look for cool guns. They're looking for calls and clothes. And I mean, you name it, waders. They're always looking for that leg up, I think, chasing the perfect day. But Tim, tell us a little bit, how did you get into duck hunting?
Wow. So the first time, and I still have memories of this, my dad took me to the Salton Sea when I was 4 years old. And I can still vividly remember some of the parts of that day. And ironically, my dad did not care for waterfowl hunting. He loved upland game hunting, but he didn't like the cold and didn't like being around all of that. And the first time I went, I can just remember truly enjoying myself. And I started hunting ducks when I was 7 years old, and I've been hunting them ever since. It is truly a passion of mine. I enjoy every aspect of it, planning for the hunt, even the drive, getting out early, getting things set up. And it's kind of come full circle from where I started to where now I enjoy taking people and letting them see what I've learned all these years. And it's been a lot of fun watching that.
Yeah, it's a neat thing. It gets really in your blood, and I think one of the reasons we wanted to do a podcast on the topic today is because, like you said, we want to share it with other people, and it's not something that is easy to just jump into. With fishing, for example, it's really easy to buy some gear and go jump on a half day boat or 3/4 day boat or even overnight boat to jump right into it, and there's people around you. You figure it out pretty easy. It's a kind of a no brainer. But when you talk about not just waterfowl hunting, but hunting in general, there's a lot of things that go into play to getting out there in the field. It's not just about going in and buying a shotgun and some ammo, right? There's um, with waterfowl, they're a migratory bird, so there's a lot of laws, right, and a lot of regulations that revolve around waterfowl hunting. So, for example, um, you need obviously your hunting license. That's a no brainer. But then you need a California duck stamp. You need a federal duck stamp. There's all these different layers. Because they're migratory waterfowl, you have to use steel shot. In California here, we use steel shot all the time now, but back in the day, you could hunt doves and quail and things like that, chucker with lead. But when it came to shooting waterfowl, um, we had to use steel shot, and we'll get into a little more of those details later. But there's a lot of things to navigate for a new waterfowl hunter or someone who's interested in trying to get out there and to maybe take their kids waterfowl hunting. I've been, doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of times where parents approach us, whether it's like a youth safari day type event, or some of the different Turner's events, even at store level, where guys come in and be like, "Man, my kids want to go duck hunting. I don't know anything about it. Or they want to go do this, and I have no idea what to do." And I thought it'd be a really cool opportunity to kind of take people through it. So let's kind of get into the nuts and bolts of waterfowl hunting. And this is today we're going to be talking predominantly about waterfowl hunting in California and its neighboring states, which would be California, Arizona. And I throw Arizona in there because with the Colorado River area, we have a lot of opportunities there as well. And obviously California is a big state. There's opportunities in Northern California as well as Southern California. But let's get into the nitty gritty of it. The first thing I think is seasonality, and we have Kyle Tibbetts in here. He's our first time joining the podcast. He is our fishing tackle buyer, but also an avid duck hunter. Been duck hunting a long time. How long you been duck hunting, Kyle?
I've probably been duck hunting about 10 years now, 12 years, somewhere right in there.
And I see all your pictures all the time. You got the kids and the wife involved. It's really a family thing for you. I know Tim as well. I know, hell, his daughter's name's Teal, right? But him and his wife have grown up hunting together. And I know you and your wife have been out there hunting a bunch. And the kids, I see pictures all the time, your kids out there.
Yeah, it's super cool. We've been getting the kids into it the last couple of years. They're not old enough to shoot yet, but they love to come out and, work with the dog, help set things up, watch. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat to get the family out there. And of course, Gunner's here, our social media guy, and this is probably his first big talk about waterfowl hunting, right?
Oh yeah.
As a bow hunter, you're like me, like I was a long time ago, and you have no idea. You probably don't even understand why guys go sit in the cold in the water and sweat it out to shoot little ducks.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, no,
but
just
we're gonna
used to the
teach you
hiking.
all about it today.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We're
I'm
gonna give
ready.
you a heavy education on it.
Yep, I got
So-
lots of questions too.
So let's talk first about seasonality, right? Just like any hunting, there's a season to it. Here in California, we see it usually open about mid-October, right? And it's kind of confusing. I know it's always been weird because when you open the regulations or it changes kind of year to year and what those days are. And when you go to look and see what the season is, you see someone new to it, you're going to see like a northeastern zone opener, and then you'll see a Southern California zone opener, a Colorado River area opener, and then a balance of the state opener, right? Which are kind of weird. Let's talk about that. The northeastern zone always opens first, right?
It does. It typically opens the first Saturday in October.
Yeah. So, and I think this year the balance of state SoCal opener is like the 18th of October. Why is that area of NorCal open early? Is it the weather driven or what is it why has that always been a thing? Do you know?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the end of the season, right? Everything freezes up. So if you're looking at Lower Klamath, Tule Lake, that part into the northeast part of the state, things get locked up real quick. So their season starts a little earlier and ends a little earlier. That's one of the reasons.
I know back in the day, some of those areas in Klamath and up there were really meccas for waterfowl hunting, and I know they've gone through some challenges with water and things like that. But what's the outlook for that part of the state this year? Is it going to be a viable?
It's actually an incredible turnaround. They're expecting lots of water this year, and talking to the handful of people I know up there, that's really looking great for this year, which it hasn't been for many, many years. And, you talk about the history of waterfowl hunting. So I think it was 1903, 1904, Teddy Roosevelt actually set up Lower Klamath National Wildlife Refuge, and that became the first waterfowl managed refuge in the country.
Really?
You know, and then it just kind of spread from there. So the first state managed refuge, I believe, was Los Banos, and the state actually bought 3,000 acres to start that facility, that refuge in, I think it was 1929, 1930. And they bought it from a land baron, or a cattle baron rather, named Henry Miller. And the road to drive into Los Banos is actually Henry Miller Road. So a lot of history, and it's all just kind of spread from there. But the northeast part looks really good, and everything is water dependent.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of the way it's been in California here the last few years. There's been a lot of challenges, especially in NorCal, with water and weather. I mean, even weather. If you look at the way the birds move, for those of you who don't know, we're really dependent on these birds migrating down from the north, right? So whether they're coming from Oregon, Washington, Canada, we're in the Pacific Flyway out here. So we have always watched the weather to see what is going to happen when those birds are going to move. It's usually driven by moon phase. I know our birds out on the river, they like moving on a full moon. We like when there's a big stout north wind and everything's moving down, and then you get that cold weather push. And we haven't seen that big cold weather push here in the last few years. And I've always said, is it like, it's kind of, to me, it's been synced up with the bluefin, right? The bluefin have been here for years, and I think that's the last time we had a really gnarly winter in the north. It just seems like up north's not getting hammered by the cold weather and the and freezing out like we need on our birds out in the desert there. Um, but we're always hoping, right? Hoping for the right weather. And then you get the normal migrations, right? There's still plenty of birds that move. When you look at this season, and we'll talk a little bit about um, timing, like when's the right time to go hunting? There's the opener, obviously, and a lot of these birds there is some resident birds in a lot of these refuges. It seems like there's water, in a lot of the areas all the time. Like at Worcester, I know the opener at Worcester always shoots good, right? But it's hot. It's gonna be, it's in the 90s a lot of times, and yeah. So it can be pretty miserable. The mosquitoes are devils out there. I mean, it's a rough environment. But that's kind of how, when you look at Southern California duck hunting, you see all these picturesque things with waterfowl hunting where you see guys standing in frozen water with ice all over their dog and ice in their beard. We don't really see that here, right? But we see a different version where we're hunting. It's hot, it's muddy, the bugs are terrible, but it's still the hell we go through to put ourselves in those terrible environments is insane. I don't know why we do it, but we all love it. So seasonality, we have middle of the month, we'll call it openers. You guys can check the California Department of Fish and Wildlife regulations and see when those are for your areas. But one of the key things that we want to talk about today, we talked about when you go hunting, right? It's in the middle of October, and it usually runs through the end of January. I think this year it's January 28th. The Colorado River Zone, they sync up with Arizona, so it ends on January 31st. And obviously, like you said, because of the cold weather, the northern states probably wrap things up a little earlier, and they get freezed up, and a lot of those birds move south, and their kind of hunting opportunities done. In most cases, hopefully there's snow on the ground up there for the farmers and whatnot. But so we know that window, and then there's periods of time that are better than others, right? Like we said, the opener is generally good because people haven't been chasing the birds and pounding on the birds, right? And then there's also periods when you'll see new birds come in, right? Um, let's talk about that. Like that's a big thing. What do you like to see when you're going to go out and try to hunt outside of when you have a card at a given refuge? But what is your favorite time of the year to really focus on hunting? I know you work still and have life and everything else you have to deal with, but when do you really punch out and go, I'm duck hunting this time of year?
Typically December and January for me is my go-to time. Yep.
And Kyle, is that about the same for you?
Yeah, typically around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and that's kind of the big marker has always been Thanksgiving. I know a lot of guys come out, the way of the river that time of year, and you start seeing them all the way through the end of the season. But that's when the weather kind of gets cooler. Birds start moving. We start getting a little bit better weather. Um, so I think that I would agree with you there. That's the best time of year. Now, as far as opportunities, the one thing that's unique about waterfowl hunting is you need big ponds full of water to hunt, right? And you can't just go find those in the national forest necessarily. So let's talk about opportunities. You mentioned you hunted Worcester the first time, going back when you were a kid. I know Kyle, you hunt a place called San Jacinto all the time, which is right out here in like Merino Valley area. I guess
Yeah,
we'll call
right
it.
behind Lake Paris.
Yeah, behind Lake Paris, and then obviously Worcester's down at the Salton Sea. Now, down at Worcester, there used to be another refuge too. What's all operated? Is it all considered Worcester? Or is there still the
So
Sunny
it's
Bono?
yeah,
Or
Yeah.
that's made up of the federal side. So the Sunny Bono part is a federal part of a federal refuge, and it's made up of the hazard unit and the union. You still, when you go to the Worcester check station, if those blinds are available, you can pick one of those blinds. So while they are a federal refuge, they're operated by the state for choosing the blinds.
and these refuges, guys, for those of you who don't know, there's big chunks of property throughout the country that is deemed a wildlife refuge, right? Where this area has been set aside. The world's growing, things are getting crazy. There's houses going everywhere, towns being built everywhere, and the government years ago, and it's been through phases, and they do. I know from firsthand, they've done a little bit of horse trading for properties and things like that, but they try to lock out sections of land to preserve that wildlife in an area. And for example, the Worcester unit down there on the Salton Sea, I don't know how big it is, how many acres it is, but it's a huge area. It's all blocked off. There's tons of different duck ponds down there. There's dry fields that they grow feed in for the geese. And I don't, do they do it? I think they do some supplemental feeding for the ducks as well, probably in a closed area. I know, like on the Cibola Refuge out on the Colorado River by Blythe, they have areas that are closed to hunt, but it's like a feeding area. So they're planting corn and things specifically for the waterfowl and the wildlife. So the birds move into that area. They have safe places to roost on at night. They have feeding areas, and then obviously they let us hunt them in some areas in between. And that area, when they blocked off a lot of that refuge land, part of the hunting side of what I've seen up there happen in the history talking to guys is because they made that such a big swath of land a federal refuge you couldn't hunt, they allocated some land and said, okay, this area you'll always be able to hunt. It's kind of like a trade, right? So they lock down some closed units, but they also allow people access to other areas to maintain the waterfowl population and conservation of the waterfowl, and to give us an opportunity to actually be able to hunt some land that is desired. It's not all private land or closed government land to hunting. So we see areas like Worcester, San Jacinto, the Sacramento refuges are probably some of the better that I've always heard about. I personally have never been crazy enough to drive all the way up there and hunt. I know, Tim, you're a veteran up there. What are some of the main refuges up there? I know Delavan, Kern.
Well, Kern is actually part of the southern San Joaquin area. That's just up over the Grapevine. It's like a 3-hour drive here from the Inland Empire. And then you get into the grasslands area, which makes up about 14 refuges there. And when you get above that, you get above the town of Sacramento, and you got about another hour and a half to go, and you get Colusa, Delavan, Sacramento, Little Dry Creek, Gray Lodge, Sutter, Wonders Water, Howard Slough, Llano Seco, Yellow Bypass. I mean, there's a lot of hunting up in that area, and they grow a ton of rice. And obviously, that's a major wintering area for many different types of waterfowl, as well as other birds. And during the late December, January timeframe, just driving up and down the 99 or the 5 freeways is an amazing sight in the morning. You'll see hundreds of thousands of birds.
Yeah, it's an amazing area up there. And it's neat that people have that access because there is, when you talk about waterfowl hunting, there's a couple different options, right? There's opportunities to go on a guided operation hunt, a fully guided hunt where you're, paying several $100s a day or a weekend to go out. And in those kind of operations, you're showing up at a place, you're hunting with guides, you're taking you out to their private property, hunting their blinds in areas that they've done a lot of work to keep the birds in the area and can be really successful at the right time of year. And not everyone likes to do that kind of hunting or has the funds to do that kind of hunting. So then there's the public opportunities, right? And that's where these refuges come into play. And up in that area, there's some of the better known ones, and obviously a lot more. Obviously, there's a lot more land for that set aside, and there's a lot more birds in that area. So it works out, even though it's a little bit of a haul for us. But let's talk about if someone wants to go waterfowl hunting and they really want to kind of do it on their own and they're new to this, how does one get involved? The first thing they need to do, right, is they need to apply to get access to some of these lands because they are limited in size and we're limited in hunt opportunities, right? We have like what 100-day season here in California, and of those on all these refuges to kind of give the birds a little break, we only hunt certain days still. I think, like I know for us, it's a lot of them here are still Wednesday and Saturday and Sunday are shoot days, and the other days of the week you can't hunt. Does that still remain true? Is that a federal thing, or what's the deal on?
It's a state deal. And as far as the refuges go, the majority of them are Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. There are a handful that are Wednesday, Saturday only. And as you get further north, you'll see more of that.
A Wednesday, Saturday only. Okay. So just 2 days a week they're getting shot at, and the rest of the time they're getting be able to rest in there. Obviously, you'll see things where a lot of the clubs will kind of hold that same pattern. A lot of the guided operation things like that. And let's get into clubs. So the other opportunity, if you're not doing a paid guided hunt or trying to do it on your own, there's clubs out there, right? So what that is generally in most cases is a group of people that have bought a section of land. Let's call it a 500-acre duck club, right? So all over the area, that valley up there in the rice lands, we'll call it, or even the grassland there's plenty of clubs that exist. So these guys, and a lot of them been around a long time. I know some of them have been around for, back to the 60s, yeah, 100 years. And these clubs have changed ownership, and they're all a little bit different, but the gist of it is when you become a member of that club, you're kind of buying a piece of that land, right? So in some cases, you're a 1/20th owner of that 500 acres, and you're responsible for a lot of the costs that go into maintaining the land, maintaining the lodging, planning. In some cases, you have to pay for water, so you're paying for water to bring into the club, and it can get pretty spendy. And then obviously there's some clubs that are epic and some of the best hunting grounds in the state, and those clubs can get pretty expensive, right?
Well, there's you can spend 6 figures real quick on a buy-in, and then you have usually they have a sizable buy-in if you're going to be an owner of the property, and then you have a yearly dues fee that is set up, and that just depends on what your usage is for water, electrical, and all the rest of that stuff to make your club work. But
And those clubs, they're generally hard to get into. I know you waited for years to get into the club you're in now, right?
I did actually, and just started going up as a guest many, many years ago, and the opportunity came available for me to get involved, and I did, and enjoy it very much. And I still enjoy getting out on the refuges. It's still kind of, I'll say, getting back to my roots kind of thing. But there's a lot of refuges around where my club is at, and so when I have the opportunity, I definitely take advantage of it.
And because those clubs are hard to get involved with because there's a limited number of clubs and a limited number of people that can join those clubs. They're usually capped on based on how much area they have to hunt. And a lot of the clubs are smaller, so they may only have, 20 members or even less sometimes. I know.
A lot of them do have less. There's, just in a surrounding area where I'm at, our club, for an example, has 16. Just 2 miles up the road, there's 100. So it just depends on how much ground you have.
Ground and how much the guys hunt and things like that. But for the average guy getting into this, he wants to get his kids out there hunting. The refuge system is really the biggest opportunity for them to get involved.
100%. The state actually does an amazing job at making this available to everybody, and it's so much easier now to apply for a reservation than it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I actually brought some homework. So when I was a kid, you'd had to go to Turner's and you had to buy this $1.04 stamp. You had to get this card. You had to punch out the month, the date, and the area you'd like to apply for. At the same time, you circle that, then you would take this card, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, go to the post office, and it had to be in the Department of Fish and Game at the time, at least 10 days before the hunt date that you chose. Now, all you do is you go online, you enter your information onto the at wildlife.ca.gov, and you can pull up your profile, and you can apply for as many or as few reservations as you want to.
Is it still a fee to put in for the draw?
It is, I believe it's $1.34. Is that right, Kyle?
Just did mine this morning.
Per date, or how does it work?
Per day you want to put in for.
Per day. So if you pick, like, let's say you pick San Jacinto and Worcester for opening day, Saturday, do you?
$2.80, whatever that works out to for you.
And obviously, if you want to put in for the following Wednesday or every Wednesday of the season, things like that, or if you were to want to put in for, let's say, Worcester for every shoot day of the season, it's going to cost you $70 or something.
Yeah, so you can go on and you can do it one of two ways. You can literally pick whichever refuge you want, and you can say, hey, I want to pick every Wednesday and every Saturday, and it'll just do it for you. Like I think I did San Jacinto every Wednesday and Saturday. I think it was about 70 something bucks, $80.
Which is a heck of a lot easier than it was. I know when I started with Turner's, which is when I started duck hunting soon after I started, we still had the old school cards. I think that one's from the 80s, you said?
Early 90s.
I'm surprised it's not on stone.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
It's probably older than these guys.
But
Tim, can I take a look at that real quick? So
He's never seen a stamp.
yeah.
back in the day, even before that card, you were only allowed to apply. The reservation application system was divided into two halves during the season. And so all these cards, you could only apply for a reservation for each refuge once per half. So if you applied for Worcester as an example for opening day, you couldn't apply for Worcester again until whenever the second half started, December 1st, whatever it was. And so you might get an opportunity to get a reservation twice a year for that refuge, but that would be max.
So I got a question, because obviously this is all new to me, but obviously that card kind of reminds me of like the hunting license, with when I say I shoot a deer out here in California, we got to pop it out, time, date, things like that. And you're talking about the draw as well. At least what I know with the big game draw, you can put in, but then if you don't draw, obviously you get like money back, things like that. So for the ducks, you just put in, does that money just go towards the conservation part of it? For like the refuge, like if you don't draw?
I think employing people to manage it all.
Mm-hmm.
So you put in your $1.34, right?
Yeah.
That's just your entry into the lottery.
Yeah.
The day that you go hunt, whether you get in on a lottery or on a sweat line, like we'll talk about later, you still either have to have a season pass or buy a day pass to go. And I think that's 26 or 27 bucks. Yeah. Like I made a $300 donation in lottery draws this morning to Fish and Game. So.
Attaboy.
And that's just trying to draw. And I'd imagine there's, back in the day, those are people opening those envelopes and putting those.
Feeding them through a machine.
They did, yeah. So you could kind of justify the $1 per card then, but now it's all done by computer based. So you'd think they'd cut the cost down a little bit, but I'm sure they make some money doing that, and they probably need it in this state. So we'll let them keep doing that. But when guys put in for these dates, right, they can pick different days, different areas, things like that. And then they're hoping to get a draw number back, right? So let's say you go in, Kyle, you put in all your cards to hunt in San Jacinto. It's one of your favorite places. It's close to the house, right? Easy drive. Um, what's the deal? What are you hoping to get? Like, let's say you are successful in the draw. What do you see?
So typically, with the exception of opening day, they usually do it a couple days before. But they'll send you an email 2 weeks before your hunt day. If you are successful, they're not going to send you one if you're unsuccessful. It's really depressing to get one of those. Or you can log into your account on Fish and Game and you can see all your applications and it'll tell you successful, unsuccessful. You can print out your reservation and that's what you're going to bring in with you to the refuge.
Do you have to bring that in?
Yeah, I think technically you still do. I know there's a couple of refuges that'll honor in a pinch.
So
a
they don't get like a printout. I know like the last time I hunted a refuge, I had a real hard card like that. I think I went with Tim, right? I drew Kern. I put in just to put in. I think Tim told me if you want to put in for a couple different places, and I got like a number 3 for Kern, and Tim took me on a death march and tried to drown me up there. But it was quite a
Great trip.
Sure, but the way that works, I got a card back, I think, in the mail, and then you show up there with your card with whatever reservation number. I guess really that's what we should call it.
They will mail you the same printout. You can print out online. They'll notify you 2 weeks in advance, and then you're relying on the post office after that, right? I've gotten some after the hunt days. So I wouldn't stand there looking at your mailbox. I would check online.
You'll check and see, but you're looking to get a reservation number back. So let's say you get number 9 reservation for San Jacinto on opening day, right? So someone goes through all the hoops, they go online, they put in for their refuge areas to be able to hunt, and we'll put up on the screen where they go do that. For YouTubers, do you know off the top of your head what the web address is where people go put in for the draw?
It's Tim just had it.
Wildlife.ca.gov.
Wildlife.ca.gov. So you guys can go there. There's probably a lot of information about how the draw works and what to expect. And you can start putting in, you can put in now?
Yeah, you can put in now.
Is it September? What's the opening window?
It's usually right around September 1st.
Yeah, it's usually, that's why I always have said like dove seasons, like to me is the big kickoff to get ready for real hunting, right? Everything kind of starts from there. So you can go on there and you could learn about the areas. There's a lot of information that I've seen over the years where you can see a historic success, right? For those shoot dates, like there's duck counts, right? So you can look at a specific refuge like Worcester. I don't know if it's accessible by day, like in the past, of what the duck counts were, but you can look and see what the draw odds are for certain areas and things like that. Kind of like the big game drawing, you can get an idea of how hard some of those areas to draw. We were looking at today and looking at some of the areas up there in that Sacramento area that get huge numbers of people put in because they're so good, right? But just like any other type of lottery, it's really worth putting in for some of those harder ones and trying to draw. But you can get your name in there for pick whatever you're comfortable with, whether, it's a short drive to San Jacinto or Worcester if you're a SoCal guy. And if you're listening to this up in NorCal, you got, the mecca of waterfowl hunting up there. So there's a lot of opportunity to put in for different refuges up there. But once you guys put in for these reservations and you get a reservation back, you show up on the shoot day. Let's talk about that. How does that look? What time do you have to be there by a certain time? Do they tell you on your reservation what time you need to be there?
So I don't know. I get so few draws on the reservation. I couldn't tell you what one looks like anymore. Most of the refuges down here in the South typically check-ins at 3. I know some of the NorCal ones I think are a little bit later, right, Tim? Like 4?
It just depends. A lot of them are based on hours before the shoot time. So let's say shoot time's at 6, and then you got to be there 2 hours before. So they'll be at 4, and when shoot time goes to 6:15, it's 4.
Yeah, and it tells you that on your reservation generally.
It does.
Okay, and when people show up, now when they show up, that reservation basically is guaranteeing them access to that refuge that day. So when they show up, there's usually a check-in building, and it'll usually have good signage and things for people that are new to kind of steer them in the right direction where they need to check in. they get there, whatever it is, a couple hours early, and they go up to the office and check in and let them know that they're there and they have a reservation, right?
So they'll begin the check-in process and they'll say reservation number one. And so if you happen to have that reservation, you walk into the check station or up to the check station and pick whatever site you want. And, there's lots of different opportunities on refuges depending where you are. Down here, we have blinded areas, whether you're at Worcester or San Jacinto, you pick a blind. When you get up over the hill and start going north on the 5, there's a lot of different opportunities to hunt. There's free roam areas, there's assigned pond areas, and there's blinds. And some of these refuges have all three. Some of them have just one of those aspects. So there's a lot of different opportunities to try and hunt too. You're not just regulated to hunting a blind at some of these refuges.
How are the people that are running this check-in process? If is there opportunity for people who are new? Let's say one of our listeners puts in for San Jacinto and he draws number 5 on the second, third Wednesday of the season, and he's new and he shows up there with his kid and they want to go duck hunting, right? They have all their gear ready. Is that guy, will he give him any information, or is it just strictly a clerk behind that? Are they going to say, you know, these ponds are dry, don't go over there. These ponds are okay. This place shot good yesterday at number 5, I'd go over here. Do they give you any aid at all?
Every refuge is a little bit different. For the most part, guys are usually pretty helpful. Obviously it's hunting. There's some gatekeeping that goes on, with guys. But I think if you show up with a good attitude, and if you show up beforehand, even call down to the refuge, the guys are usually pretty helpful. But when it's 3 a.m. and there's 300 guys behind you,
That's a good
now
tip
is
to
not the
call.
time
I
to
guess
do
you
that.
could call on a Saturday or something and try to get someone on the phone.
Yeah, and one of the best things you can do too, most every refuge has at least 1 or 2 like cleanup days they do, usually one before the season and one after. Um, for the refuges that are not open to the public Monday through Friday, the rest of the season, that's a great way to get out, see the blinds, see the areas, talk to the guys. And you can just see what's going on. You're not, I remember like the first time I went out to Worcester, you come out there in the middle of the dark, you have no idea what you're going, you're driving on levee roads, hoping you don't wind up in a ditch somewhere. That's not the way to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's kind of hard when you're looking at a terrible hand-drawn map from the 60s of where the parking area.
Turn left at the big tree, walk across the 2x6.
So that's actually a really good tip and a really good opportunity to volunteer your time and help with the refuge and do those cleanup days. That's a great opportunity. But once you actually get down there, you pick an area like you mentioned. There's areas with blinds. I know there's even handicap blinds for people who have limited access. Almost every refuge has a handicap blind, which can be a great opportunity for people that check that box, right? That need a little extra assistance getting around, because some of these can be challenging. I know, like Kern, we walked for what seemed like 2 miles in the dark before we even stepped off the road. But and some areas aren't as bad, right? At Worcester, you can kind of they have different parking areas, and then you walk in, and these areas are generally laid out. Whether there's a hard blind there, like on the Cibola Wildlife Refuge, those lottery blinds are actual physical pit blinds in the ground. At Worcester, when I hunted Worcester, you had to hunt within so many feet, or what is the rule of the stake?
Yeah, I can't remember how many feet it is.
It's 100 yards from the stake number. So if you say I want number 32A, you have to hunt within 100 yards of that sign that says 32A. And that keeps you guys all safe with people hunting other areas and things like that, so people aren't wandering off. But in that instance where there is no blind, people need to be ready to have some marsh stools or something like that. They're going to be kind of hunkering down the toolies, or making a makeshift blind, things like that. That's not necessarily going to be a pit blind or some of these duck blinds you see on TV. You got to be pretty self-sufficient on getting dug in, getting ready to hunt.
You need to be ready to go. One of the things that I used to do, I spent a lot of time at Worcester from my early teens through my early 20s, and I had seen so much of that. I just saw all these other opportunities in the state. and I just wanted to go experience the other refuges. And over the last 50 years, I've hunted almost all of them. And one of the things I found out real quick is you need to be able to do some scouting. You need to be able to, try and get up there. And like Kyle mentioned, the cleanup days are a phenomenal way to not only learn the refuge, but they're also a great way to help support the refuge. What I used to do, we can use the case of Mendota for an example. Huge refuge, over 10,000 acres. It's all free roam. And I would go up after the first September. They would typically open the refuge to where you could drive around. You can't drive. You have to stay on the main roads and the main parking lots. But Mendota is one of the few refuges you can actually ride a bicycle on hunt days to get to where you're going. And so what we would do is we would go up on an off day before the season started, take a notebook, jump on the bikes, and we would just ride the different areas of the refuge and start making notes on areas we wanted to see, hunt, where to turn left at the big tree. And that would help. And it also gave you an idea. It's like, okay, if I got into this area, I do need a marsh stool. I do need this. I do need that. I'm going to want to make sure I bring this. And those are helpful ways to learn the refuge.
Yeah, that's a good idea because it's tough. I know I've hunted some clubs a few times, and people that aren't hunting, and they say, "Oh, you can go hunt my blind at a club," and like it's pretty crazy trying to figure it out in the dark. I'll never forget a funny story. I was hunting years ago with a good friend of mine that worked here. His name is Nabor, and he bought at a route like a auction for DU or CWA. He bought a boat hunt at Ralph's Duck Club, and I don't know, is Ralph still there? That Duck Club still there? So there's a boat club uh, down here off the 71, like in the Prado area, if you know where that's at. And it's later in the year when that area is all flooded. There's I don't know, they have 20 boats or something down there, and he won this or bought this hunt for a couple $100 and talked me into going with him. And you get off the 71 at like this random, not even an exit. You like get off on the shoulder of the highway and you turn right on this road that the gates open on shoot days. And I never even knew you could drive where we drove. And we pull around and all of a sudden there's like some string lights hung up and a bunch of, it looks like a Louisiana bayou there in the morning. There's a container and a bunch of guys in camo, and we get in boats, and I think we did kind of a where are you gonna go? And they said we're gonna put you in the Mallard hole. I think they called it that day. And it's super foggy, right? Like I remember driving to hunt with you at Rahaga's Duck Club or Splatter S back in the day. And when I lived in like San Dimas at the time, and you'd wake up early in the morning and start driving and fine, but you'd get on the 71 freeway and get off and start driving on a couple of the different side roads down there, and you're like, whoa, where was that fog at? And I mean, it gets socked in fog. And that morning, that whole basin was just fogged in. And we get on these boats, right? And we're not duck boat guys. We're in the dark in duck boats. I'm like, I'm not driving. The board's driving the boat. Luckily, this guy said, oh, just follow me and I'll take you there. So we follow this guy, and he kind of pointed out there was like some little streamers in the trees as we kind of went through, and we kind of remembered, okay, there's streamers, and he pulls in this one area, and he's like, here, put your decoys out here, and I'd hide the boat over here, and we did that. I think that was kind of a boat blind location. We put our decoys out, we tied the boat off like with headlamps, and we hunted, and we shot a few ducks, but then it became time to go back. And I was like, I have no freaking idea how to go back. Like, we just had to wing it. I mean, you could end up anywhere in that place. It's pretty wild. And some of these refuges, that's how they are. You start walking around in the dark, and it's then all of a sudden, or foggy and dark, and then that burns off, and it's 9, 10 a.m. and you got to figure out how to get back. And some of these areas I know where, like in Kern, when I hunted with you, we walked in a road, which is super easy, right, to find back to the parking lot. But then we stepped off the road and walked, God, I don't even know. It felt like forever and chest deep water, right? So it's a great opportunity to get in the refuge ahead of time, the ones that are open, and kind of get your bearings and make notes and draw little maps and things like that. Now there's such good technology with like Onyx and different things like that where you can drop pins on your iPhone. Like we didn't even have that, right? Um, so now we have a lot of cool technology where you can walk in and mark areas where you want to hunt, things like that. But be flexible. Don't have one because you're not always going to get to hunt right where you want. Someone might beat you to that area, things like that. Because on some of those free roam areas, you just kind of get in and go, right? So if you're behind Tim Baker, you're screwed because I guarantee you he's gonna get there first. I think he has like mud feet that he's to be able to walk on in the mud. I don't know how he does it, but he
It's a special technique.
yeah, you don't want to be behind him if he's trying to get to your spot. I can tell you that.
It's you talk about getting in and doing all that. Mendota is one of those places that the reservation system you apply for. The non-reservation works different than any other refuge that I can think of in the state. You park your car in line, and you stay with your car. And so for opening day, there'll be people in line 6-7 days ahead of time before the opener.
Now they have reservations or no? Yes, but it's all everyone. It's just like as is it? Do they let you in the gate in that order, or do you? Because you line up by number order. How's that work?
So it used to be you would just line up and you'd get a reservation for Mendota, and it didn't have a number on it. Now they have a number on it, and they have a parking area for reservations. And a reservation at Mendota is good for 2 adult hunters, and then juniors and non-hunting companions. Once they get the reservations in, then they start letting cars in. And for opening day, I would get there early Wednesday morning, and I was typically 30th, 50th in line, something like that. And you stay in your truck for 3 days waiting for the opener, and it's the same thing we were talking about earlier. It's hot, there's mosquitoes, and the fun part was, you could call the pizza place in Mendota, and they'd actually deliver a pizza out in line. Yeah, that was just standard issue.
When it
So-
comes to the lines, just experience with like SoCal fishing, it can get pretty tricky. Like lakes like Diamond Valley, I'm sure you know about that, but you'll see people, they'll park their car a couple days before and just leave it there. Is that thing, or do you have to be in your car? Like, could you leave your car?
So at that particular refuge, if you leave your vehicle, then you are they'll put a tag on your car, and you're automatically kicked out of line when you
Come
get
and
up
tow
there.
you.
Wow.
It'll still get pretty rowdy on Thursday and Friday night for the opener up there.
Still a few folks enjoying themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a rite of passage, right? I've always heard about Mendota and the guys lining up and it being a kind of a party for a couple days before.
There's a lot of things going on in the evenings.
Some people don't wake up opening morning.
So it sounds pretty daunting, but obviously everyone can navigate it. Go to the website, try to put in some cards for areas you want to hunt, refuges you want to hunt on days you can get out there. But let's talk about probably the most common thing that these people can do if they want to go hunting and they haven't been successful in the draw. Maybe they're intimidated to even get involved in the draw, and they just flat out want to go hunting, right? So they plan a day, they have, an opportunity to get their buddies together, and they want to go duck hunting on a Saturday in December. How does it work? How can they go hunt Worcester or San Jacinto or any of the refuges in the north if they just want to show up and have, a chance at hunting? What does that look like? It's called the sweat line, right? It's kind of what they've talked about. So let's talk about that, Tim. How does that work? If you want to hunt, let's say Worcester on opening day, and you have no card, you have nothing, you just want to go duck hunting, right? You bought a gun, you got ammo, and you got the will to get out there and deal with the mud and the mosquitoes. How does one do that?
So a lot of the refuges handle their draw differently. Worcester, if I remember correctly, is the night before they hold the draw, and it's at I think 10 o'clock. Isn't that right,
Yeah,
Kyle?
I think it is at 10 still.
And so you need to be there before that time. They'll give you a card to fill out, and basically you're putting your name and hunting license number on it, and everyone in your party that's hunting with you. Turn that card in, and they'll do the draw at 10 o'clock, and it just starts kicking out numbers, and maybe you drew 10th in the draw. So the way that works is that after all the reservations that have showed up and have picked a blind, Then they start the non-draw, the non-reservation hunters. And so they pick an order as the number they got for on their card of whatever blinds are left.
And from my understanding, if it is full, let's say let's say you really get hosed, right? And you don't get a card back, you don't have a reservation, and you go down and you sweat line it. And Worcester, I think I do recall, is the night before. It's probably why I've never done it, because you got to be super committed. San Jacinto, I think you can show up in the morning, right?
Yeah, so San Jacinto's 3 a.m.
3 a.m. So you get there at 2:30, 2:45 in the morning, and you walk up to the check-in station and say, "Hey, I didn't get a card, but I want to put in for the draw."
Yeah, so they'll have a sign-in sheet out, and there'll be 20 to 60 other guys with similar ideas. It depends on the day. Opening day, a lot of people show up with reservations. You go to Worcester on a Wednesday in early November, probably 20% of reservations show up. So there's excellent odds to get out depending on where you're going and what time of year. You just got to kind of manage your expectations a little bit.
Yeah, and if you show up and again you don't have a reservation, you get put late in the draw, and they only let so many people in. As we started talking about this whole process, it gets full, and you're the second to last guy, right? You go down to Worcester on opening day, and they fill all the draw spots. All the reservation guys that showed up are there, and they say, "Sorry, Tim, we're full."
I've heard that conversation many times over 50 years.
Or we have
used to-
this one option left, and you're like, it's okay, I'll pass.
I used to draw so bad at Kern that the last 4 or 5 of us would take a $5 bill and put it under a rock, and whoever drew dead last got the money. But the way that works is that that just means you're first. Let's say the person in front of you got the last blind, and you're next. When the people come in from hunting and they check their blind in, that means you have first pick on what's available.
And you could go out and like hunt the evening, for example, where a lot of guys are done, they've had enough, they've been there all night freaking long. A lot of cases they've driven all of, for 3-4 hours and got there early and put their decoys out and went through this process. There's a chance you can go sleep in your truck for a few hours and wait for someone to leave. And when someone leaves, it's kind of like when you go to a busy Turner's grand opening, right? When a couple people leave, we let a couple people in. So if someone leaves, then you can go in and pick where they were or whatever open spots from people who have vacated. In some cases, those guys just got tired of it or maybe fell in the water like I did and want to go home because they're freezing, or they shot their limit of birds and they're going home for the day. So you can go in and make the best of it.
Absolutely. And that makes it nice and easy. And I mean, when I look back at all the years I spent at Worcester, I opening day afternoons were fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I'd imagine some of those guys stick it out, but I'd imagine there's a good fair amount of people who get done in the morning. And
Yeah, you see a lot of guys leaving by 10 or 11. And like what you're talking about, the refill list, there's some diehard guys that'll hang out in the parking lot. That's not usually me anymore, but it used to be. Depends on the day, though.
so awesome. Let's talk a little bit for new people again. We talked about passes a little bit ago, right? So you need obviously a California hunting license. You're going to need a federal duck stamp. You're going to need a California duck stamp. A HIP stamp is a new one. I still don't even know what that is, but that's a Harvest Information
Just
Program.
a
survey
Yeah,
stamp.
doesn't cost anything.
And then obviously if you put in for these reservations, you'll need to spend some money there. But the other thing you're going to need is a pass, right? To be able to access. Now, there's like a type A pass, right? Is it a type A and a type B? Is that what they are?
Type A actually covers type B refuges.
Yeah.
And that pass lets you into state and federal refuge. You need it for every refuge. Okay. And what does that cost?
So I think a 1 day is 26 or 27 bucks. They do a season long pass. I forget what the math is on it, but I think if you go 10 or 12
It's like
times,
$215.
Yeah. So if you
pays for
go
yourself.
regularly, it's well worth buying
Yeah.
the season pass. But that's something you'll need. And again, that's just a way of collecting funds to keep these refuges running.
And like you were talking about, there is 2 different types. So there's a type A and a type B refuge. 90% of the refuges are all type A's. Some of the NorCal stuff where it's kind of come and go as you please, that's the type B stuff. but pretty much everything you're going to hunt down here is all type A.
When you're going to these refuges to scout, like a lot of them are open just for bird viewing, right? Like people that aren't hunting on hunting days. There's a lot of people that are just meandering around these places on non-shooting days to look at birds and wildlife, things like that. Do those people all require a pass as well?
I know they were talking about some fees. I don't know if you know any more on that, Tim.
A lot of them require
It's
a
not the
hunting
same
and or
pass.
fishing license. So if you
Yeah.
have a hunting and or fishing license, a lot of them let you want to do a tour loop. Kern has a nice tour loop. Some of the refuges in the grasslands have tour loops. Sacramento refuges have really nice tour loops, and you'll see hundreds of thousands of birds late in the season. And that's always you don't necessarily get to learn the hunting area, but you're enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. But for actually hunt days, you need to have that type A pass.
Yeah, and they don't sell them at the refuges anymore. They used to. I don't know if they're honoring it online now.
You need to you just need to either go online and buy your 1-2 day or season long pass ahead of time, and or you can stop in at any Turners and buy one.
Yeah, you can get all your licensing stuff there.
So how does that work with like new licensing, like say like the hunting or a fishing license majority that I'm familiar with, but you can have it downloaded on your phone and it has like a code that they could scan and see that. Is that something as well for those or no?
So I know the refuges aren't taking digital licenses yet. I don't know about the rest of the
Mm-mm.
hunting side of things.
But that season pass, you were talking about that. If you get into, we were talking about the grasslands a little bit ago. So there's 14 or so refuges within an hour drive of each other. And there's lots of times I'd be at a refuge and it just wasn't happening. And I'd get a phone call from somebody, or I just want to get out of there and go to a different refuge. Well, I'd just take my season pass and I'd be hunting that refuge, just show them the pass. If you start doing that, buying day or 2 day
Yeah.
passes, it adds up real quick. So
Yeah.
if you spend 8 days in the field or more, the season pass is certainly worth the time.
And it's easy. You don't have to remember to go buy it the night
Mhm.
before. You don't have to scramble in your truck looking for it. If you buy it at the same time, it prints out on your hunting license, which is cool.
Oh, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah. That's one of those things that's new with the new license. There is some perks to that. Well, same thing with the stamps and everything. It's all.
It is painful to swallow $400 for, stamps, license, and passes at one time. But yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think it's a good point to take a break. We will be right back. All right, guys. Welcome back to the Turner's Outdoorsman podcast. We're here with Tim Baker, Kyle Tibbetts, and Gunnar Antillion. And of course, I'm Mike Etienne, and we are deep in the woods here about California waterfowl hunting. We've covered a lot of information, mainly about where to go and how to get there, right? As far as the refuge system, the opportunities we have here in the state, and how all that works. And I think we should talk a little bit more of the fun stuff, right? Let's talk about some gear. What do you guys think?
Yeah. So honestly, for the fun stuff, I want to hear a little more about that from all of you guys as well. Just because the parking lots and the parking lot situation.
It sounds terrible, right?
Yeah, it sounds like something else, all that. If you guys can all give me like, we'll start with you, Kyle, but like your why, like why do you go out and go duck hunting? What's that drive, that motivating factor to get you up and go through those things to be able to shoot some ducks?
So it's something different to do. Like big game hunting, super fun, right?
Yeah.
But you get to go out, shoot one animal a year, you don't, if you even shoot one, right? This is super accessible. It's easy to do, relatively speaking. It's not very expensive. And it's a passion that I have. I try to tell my wife why I enjoy it, and I can't answer that question either to her. It sounds terrible, like you were talking about. You're wet, you're cold, you're muddy, but it's a blast to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the outdoors. I mean, there's parts of it that are not so fun, but it's that feeling when you successfully harvest an animal or catch a fish, like you're able to trick it. I think it's just a real primal feeling, and that's probably what brings us all back. But yeah, Tim, what about you?
Insanity, I think.
There we go. That's a good word right there. That's
Mental derangement.
I've just always been passionate about waterfowl. I've said for 100 times I love fishing. I've spent my life fishing, from everything from trout to anything you can imagine. And if I could hunt ducks all year long, I'd sell every stick of fishing tackle I own. That's definitely my number one thing to do. I enjoy it. I enjoy planning the trip. I enjoy getting up early. I enjoy seeing what the day is going to bring. I love watching the sunrise. Um, and I spend a lot of days hunting by myself every year just because I still enjoy that time just to get away. It's a head clearer for me.
Yeah, it's a good reset. There's nothing like watching that sunrise. Also the sunset too. I prefer sunrises when, you're either out on the mountain or you guys are at the refuge or your duck club or you're out fishing. You just can't beat it. But Mike, so I mean, we have a similar experience because, big game guys. I've never hunted ducks, and kind of how your ascension going from into big game to ducks. You want to?
Yeah,
kinda-
I'll tell you what it is for me. I've thought a lot about this, and a lot of people ask, right? And for me, if I was going to tell you what one thing that makes you just put everything you have towards it, I mean, it can be literally, it's almost like an addiction, right?
Mm.
I've talked about this before, and what makes you willing to put your life, your family, your job, whatever it is, kind of on the back burner to go out and go duck hunting or goose hunting or whatever it is. To me, it's the search of that good day. It's that good day. Like you guys talk about passion, and I've always talked about what's the passion. It's not always easy. It's not if you think it's like it is on TV and we go out there and we jump through all these hoops and you drive and put little cards in the mail and get a number back and then we drive to our spot and check in and you walk out and you throw some decoys in the water and you shoot a limit of ducks and go home and eat them. It doesn't work that way, right? We all wish it worked that way every day, but and that's a lot of anti-hunting people don't understand. It's far from the truth, right? It's just like big game hunting. You go on tons of hunts and you're not successful, right? What you are successful in is experience, like we talked about, the being out there, they're being with your buddies, seeing nature, seeing. I've seen some of the most beautiful things that people go on vacations to see, and I see it as an afterthought while I'm in some kind of hunt, right? Um, so that's all a big part of it. But I'd say the main thing that for me, what gets me going and gets me, up in the morning, it's chasing that perfect day when it all comes together, right? And we've all had those days, hopefully, where you go out and you shoot a limit of mallards or you shoot your limit of geese or you have that great experience hunting big game, whatever it is. But for waterfowl hunting, for me, the passion and the addiction is chasing that perfect day when everything goes the right way, and then you have that and you cherish that memory and it's in the back of your mind and you want it again, right? You want to get there again, so you go and you work harder and you drive further and you put more effort in and you try new things, all in search. And you know what, then that the next 50 days of hunting may not be like that day, but you're out there, you're waking up and you're optimistic the night before and you're hoping that that next day is going to be what that perfect day was. And to me, that's what makes everything we do worth it.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
chasing that experience and that memory.
Yeah, never ending cycle either.
Especially when you get to share it like with your buddies, like you're talking about, or your kids, or your wife.
Huge thing. My biggest passion probably is desert mule deer hunting, and to me, that's kind of like what you guys feel. And I know Tim probably more than anyone is. It's such a it's such like a piece of what your person is, right? It's like that's a thing. You guys go to your club and it's all the guys that are there every weekend, and maybe you haven't seen them in a couple of weeks. Like in my case, I don't see them all week, and then I get to my house in the desert and all my buddies are there and you're catching up with the week and you're excited for what the morning's going to bring, and it's just part of that lifestyle is really what makes it's so near and dear to me, whatever kind of hunting it is. And that's why it's so important to share with other people, and why we started this podcast was to get other people involved, because I feel like as time goes on, there's less and less people that are enjoying the hunting and fishing side of things. There's a lot of shooters and a lot of gun people out there, and we're going to get to you guys in the next few weeks with the episodes. But the hunting side of things, it's important to get new people involved so it never goes away. We got to keep people, we got to keep youths, kids coming into the sport. We got to get new people into the sport. Um, and it's just so much damn fun. If you introduce people to it, they'll like it. I have kids now that are hunting ages, and they love it. They bring their friends, and their friends love it. Like for dove opening, we're talking, I have a bunch of football player kids that come out now with my son Branson. They love being there. They love the whole experience, whether it's staying in the house and eating and driving around side by sides. But at the end of the day, we're waking up and going hunting, and that's a big part of it. And I think the only thing they don't like doing is cleaning birds. They still don't like that. But great question, Gunner. Let's get into some of the gear, Tim. And as a buyer, you used to be our hunting buyer. I think when I first started working with you a lot, you were a hunting buyer. You bought everything hunting really for Turners, and all the gear. And I was kind of learning it then. But let's talk about some of the gear that is absolutely mandatory for guys that want to get out there and go duck hunting.
Great question. So you can make it as simple or as hard as you want on yourself, and it really depends on where you're going and what you're doing. For somebody that's hunting San Jacinto or Worcester close by here, you can have a dozen, 2 dozen decoys. You're going to use a call of some kind, and you can stop by the store and we can talk about calls and show you how to use those. You're going to need a pair of waders, and some camel clothing, and you're really set to go. It doesn't take a whole lot more than that. Once you get established and you start learning what birds do, how they react to different things, then you have the opportunity to do some different stuff in your spread. So I think it's the first day of December is when we're allowed to use spinning wing decoys. And so
Let's talk about decoys a little bit. I know at certain refuges, it's something that you're going to want to have with you, right? No matter what, wherever you're going, you got to have at least a dozen decoys, we'll call it 8 to 12 decoys. I mean, you buy them in half dozens now. So I would say it's a real good idea to have 12 or 18 decoys, probably. Um, I like to kind of have a mix because you see a lot when you mimic what I see, and that's a good opportunity if you're new to this and you're not able to get out this season. And you're it's in the winter time of year. I recommend going out to these places. Go where there's ducks. I remember Tim told me when I was learning how to call, which we'll get into a little bit now, how crazy it is to learn to call. But he said go out and listen to the ducks, right? So I'd go sit like at Pudding Stone in the evening and just be fishing or whatever, but I'd pay attention to what these ducks are doing. And you'll hear old hens calling or whatever. You start to pay attention to that, right? Decoying birds is the same way. When you drive up on these ponds or you go for a walk and you look at birds just being birds, what do they look like? Are the mallards all over in one section? Are the teal all separate from them? Are they all intermingled? What are the pintail doing? There's always a look, right? And you want to kind of mimic what is the most realistic. I know with goose hunting, like I learned in Canada, going goose hunting in Canada, I never really saw it. I'd always heard about it, but I never got to see the amount of waterfowl. I never really went up into NorCal, so I didn't experience that. So I saw it in Canada for the first time, where you could see when you'd see a dry field, you'd see fields with only snow geese in them. And then you drive down the road and there'd be fields with only Canadian geese in it. Or you'd come to a field and you'd see half the field was all snow geese, and then you'd see a big patch of speckled bellies, and then 30 yards away from those you'd see a group of honkers. Like they don't just intermingle and cohabitate very well together. So when you go, if you were to go put a goose spread out and mix all your honker and your snow goose decoys, it's going to look really unrealistic, right? So for a guy hunting, a new guy, doesn't have a huge budget to buy, and you're walking into these places, right? So you got to carry a bag of decoys in your hand or on your back. I would say probably less than 2 dozen decoys is fine. It's no big deal. Do you like to mix those up a little bit? Do you like to have, you buy a dozen mallard decoys, you're good to go? I mean, if you're just getting into it, it'll work. But what is your like early season decoy set look like? I know when you're not hunting your club, which I'm sure you guys have a lot of decoys there, but when you're gonna go out and hunt a kern or a Worcester or a San Jacinto, what do you guys like to have in the bag?
Well, I will typically start with something light in the beginning part of the season. Birds haven't been pressured. Um, you don't have to set a ton of decoys. You can literally get away with a dozen, 2 dozen decoys. Um, and as the season progresses, depending on what refuge I was hunting and whether it was a blinded area, whether it was a free roam area, there's days where I would set 3 or 4 decoys if it was a little small pothole. If it was a big body of water, there's days I'd set 15, 20 dozen. And it just, depends on.
Where your draw is and what you got. When you go out and you're setting a small set, like a small hole in San Jacinto, what do you bring traditionally, Kyle?
Something like that. I mean, typically I'll bring a couple of teal. Those birds see a lot of decoys. They get really pressured. I go back to my bass fishing kind of background and think about all the lakes we fish that see a million anglers with everything thrown at them, every calling at these birds, every spinning wing decoy. You try to do something different that seems like it's going to work. You know what I
Yeah, and there's some neat opportunities now. You see some of these like Pacific Flyway harvester packs and things like that, where essentially it's 4 to 6 teal, green wing teal, and maybe 3 pintail and a couple widgeon and a couple mallards, and it's a kind of good spread. Or you get you know a handful of mallards and a handful of teal is all you need really.
Yeah, you get some of
Um,
those puddle packs.
yeah, things like that. Obviously, there's a ton of pintail out here. That's probably our biggest bird. What is the limit this year? 2? It's going to be 3. That is crazy. See, I've never seen that. So, for those of you who don't know, pintail is a beautiful bird. They're very abundant here. When I started, you could shoot 1, and then for I know a while there was 2, and it sounds like this year it's going to be 3, which is cool. It just shows you that even though there's so many people in the world and everything going on, those numbers they're not just letting us shoot 3 because we want to shoot 3 pintail. They're doing it really as a population management, and the biologists have decided that hey, you know what? Um, we should be culling a little bit of these this year. So that's exciting to see. That means numbers are up overall, I'd imagine, and that's pretty exciting because that's a lot of times here. There's so many pintail. There's days when you're like, I could have shot a limit of pintail, but I shot my 2 and I'm done. And there's not a lot of mallards or widgeon or anything else flying around. So that's pretty exciting. It's a good half a limit, right?
That just sounds
Almost.
like a testament to, the money going towards the conservation and the refuge and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So waders, I would say, are probably one of the most important things outside of decoys. Um, decoys, like you guys said, yeah, everyone's very opinionated. You could have a few, you could have a lot, whatever it is, whatever your budget is. I would say mix them up. I would say widgeon look really good. There's a lot of white on them. Pintail look good. They catch your eye. But I agree, having a bunch of decoys it looks unnatural. I do a lot of goose hunting. We do some guided hunts out at the river. I do that on occasion, and we start the same thing. When certain times of year, we set like small family groups, and by the end of the year, you're throwing everything in the kitchen sink out there, right? Um, and you just gotta kind of have to learn from experience. But I'd start small. Um, you can go into any Turner store. We have most of the stores carry decoys or can get you the decoys you need and point you in the right direction. But something real important is waders. We're hunting waterfowl, guys. That means we're in the water. We're not up in Canada or some of these guys in the Dakotas where we're hunting these big dry cornfields and things that is absolutely after the little bit of waterfowl hunting I've done here where you're dealing with the mud and the water and everything else. To be able to dry field hunt, it is divine. It's really, it spoils you. So I don't spend a lot of time in waders. I spend a lot of time in a dry field. But let's talk about waders. And waders have come a long way. Back in the day when I got into it, it was probably right when uh, everything was going from only neoprene waders to a breathable style wader. And now for us, I would say breathable is the route to go, unless you guys would disagree with that. But um, it's hot here most of the time. Even in December, I find myself hunting in short sleeves and light pants and things like that. It can get a little cold in the morning and things like that. I imagine you're getting up in Northern California, the weather's a little different, but having a big 4 mil wader, neoprene wader is not the way to go for early season or even mid season down here in Southern California. What do you guys gravitate towards?
I mean, pretty much year round, I wear breathables. If I go up north or somewhere where it's colder, I'll layer up underneath it. But just from a comfort standpoint, I mean, they weigh probably half as much as my neoprene waders. They're not quite as durable. They've come a long ways from what they used to be, but I mean, the neoprene stuff is pretty durable. It's usually a little bit cheaper, but you'll be far more comfortable in a pair of breathables.
Tim, you're a breathable guy.
I am. Learned the lesson many, many years ago when breathable waders first became, something that I needed to start paying attention to. One of the factories gave me a pair when I was in the office, and I took them out. And I was complaining about the neoprene, early season, like you were just talking about. You sweat, and you pull your waders off, you're soaking wet. So I wear these breathable waders, and I go out and I go hunt, and I come back and I'm soaking wet, and I'm like, well, these things have a hole in them. So I get them back to the factory, and they go, okay, we'll send you another pair. So they send another pair out. Try these. So I go out the next hunt day, and same thing. I get back to the truck. I'm soaking wet. I go, man, these things are defective. So finally they asked me, they said, well, let's stop and think about this for just a second. What are you wearing underneath your waders? I said, my jeans, just like I always do. And they go, well, you're wearing a sponge. Right? So you need to wear breathable properties underneath your breathable waders to make this whole process work. So that's fleece, polypropylene. Those are the things you want to wear underneath your waders so that you stay dry, you stay comfortable, and it allows you to be comfortable in the heat that we have here in Southern California when you're duck hunting.
Yeah, it's super important. And I think for what we're doing out here, chest waders are pretty much the way to go. I know in certain areas you're hunting certain clubs, you can get away with a hip wader, which is like a knee high. If you guys don't know, they're coming just above your knee or to your belt line. Probably halfway up your thigh, I'd say. But for what we're doing here, chest waders are pretty much the way to go. Would you guys agree?
Well, 100%.
100%.
Because a lot of this water you're going to find is going to be waist to chest deep. So you want to make sure that you have a chest wader on. And then they make various stocking foot where you wear a boot. They make boot foot. I know guys are opinionated at different things, like at Worcester with the mud down there. A lot of guys like wearing a boot, right? Oh, not a boot foot, because they when you're walking in really sticky, gooey mud, having a boot tied on your foot on a stocking foot, it's a little easier to get out of the mud than you're pulling your foot and it's coming out of your slip-on boot, and it's not working the best. So talk to the guys in the stores or jump on the online forums, and you can do some shopping there and figure out what is the best direction. But a good quality pair of waders is something that you're definitely going to be a must-have list, right? It's going to be as important as like a camo jacket, hat, things like that. The one thing that's important with waterfowl, and I think one of the things that makes it neat as a retailer of hunting gear is guys like buying gear, right? And there's a lot of new gear out there, but clothing and camo, it's important because these birds are so keyed in to colors and things like that. You got to be hidden. They're a little animal that everything wants to eat, so they're super skittish, and they get hunted by people up and down the country. So you really need to make sure you're concealed, and that's, I think, some of the things I know, Tim, you've taught me over the years and talking to people as you're standing in a Thule line on the edge of a duck pond with your decoys out, you're calling, whatever, and you're looking up in the air. If you don't have a face mask on or face paint on, your big shiny white face is going to be showing. Guys' hands on their call with their watch or their wedding ring. You really want to think about all that. It's a lot like turkey hunting, and that you got to give the animals respect, because these animals are smart and they get hunted, they get pressure. There's a lot of predators, so make sure that you're taking the extra layers of concealment. One, when you're getting in an area, make sure you're building some kind of a blind to cover your movement, things like that. Make sure that you're camoed up well. Make sure you have face paint on, a hat, a face mask, something to cover your face and your arms. I know it gets hot out there, but long sleeve t-shirts are always a good way to go. Like Tim has on today, a button-up shirt like that, in some kind of camo pattern, to keep you concealed. Because concealment when waterfowl hunting is key. I found that you just got to stay hidden. especially if you're guys are hunting with dogs and things like that. Keep your dogs still. You got kids with you. The kids are hard to keep them still. Um, so make sure they're camoed up and in an area. Make sure you're brushing in your blind area and things like that. Super important. And that you have good quality camo on. That goes a long way. One of the things that we see a lot of out at the club I hunt at, when we're calling, generally there's one or two of us calling for a group of people, and the people get excited and they want to look. All right, they all want to look up at the birds and watch what the birds are doing. And it's probably the hardest thing to do is tell these guys to keep their heads down, keep their heads down. But these birds will see your face looking at them and moving. They don't like. They're looking for movement. It seems like to me. And if you're moving, even if you're going to grab your gun or do whatever, that'll flare birds really bad. And these things aren't easy to hit, right? So you want to try to get them as close and as calm as you can in front of you to get those good shots, all right, and knock them down. So staying concealed, watching your movement, camo is super important. Good camo. What else do we need out there, guys?
Well,
You want to talk about shotguns?
Let's before we get into guns, because that's going to be such a big one. What about bags? How do you get all your crap out there?
so that's a really good point. So I've gone through a lot of phases of that over the years. Large bags, small bags, decoy carts that you push down the road to get all your stuff from point A to point B. I've bought factory ones. I've welded some, and it just depends on how big a cart you want to take and how much work you're going to put into your day. I've gotten everything down pretty much to a very small waterproof backpack that just holds a couple bottles of water, some ammo for the day. And that's one thing, too, that we didn't talk about was when you're hunting on a refuge, you're allowed 25 shells at a time. You can walk back to your car or truck and get another box to go back out with you. But while you're in the field hunting, you're allowed 25 shells. And there's a couple of refuges in the state, they're actually allowed only 25 per day. So those things are something to be keep in mind when you're getting ready to go hunting.
Don't ever take Joe to those refuges.
So
We
with
gotta-
with the 25, that's just helping hunters be more conscious of, like, me and Mike were talking about, like, not sky blasting or
That's the thought process behind it. How successful that is still under debate. But yeah,
Depends on how far the truck is.
it actually is a little bit hard in a place like Worcester, for an example. So you're allowed to shoot 30 geese and 7 ducks. So you can shoot 37 birds. Now, that's not going to happen every day, but you're only allowed 25 shells. So at some point, if you're having a really good day, you're on your way back to the truck.
I mean, I think that's that perfect day Mike's talking about right there. Sounds
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you like a backpack, Kyle? What do you use to get all your gear out?
Now that we're bringing the kids, I've got to bring a lot of stuff with me. So I've been running a decoy cart and a sled quite a bit. I've never been more comfortable. I bring a space heater for them now, which I wish I would have done years ago for half the season. But I'm running a jet sled with a decoy cart, so I can kind of float all my stuff across, or I can float the kids across if I need to. If it's just me and the dog, typically it's a blind bag and whatever I can throw over my shoulder.
So you're bringing a decoy bag and a blind bag or backpack, and you have your ammo in there and water, coffee, essentials to get you through.
Pack it all in, some snacks and whatnot. Yeah.
And the carts, the decoy carts, those are geared to guys that, in some of these situations, people want big spreads, right? They want 5 dozen decoys, and the decoys are bulky. They're big, right? They're life-size ducks. So,
Yeah, I mean, you can make one as big or as small as you want. I see guys running old, children's strollers with gun racks and decoys.
but the
on them and
idea is you're
whatnot.
able to cart these things in. with-
Exactly.
and a lot sometimes you're in mud and things like that, so they have like a bike tire, like a mountain bike tire type situation on them.
Yeah, and typically it's not a short walk for the most part. So it's nice to have.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, well, let's get into. We talked about mud seats. I got a note here. That's a big one. When you walk out to these areas, if you're not hunting a blind, like we discussed, you're not in a pit blind or above ground blind that sometimes may have a bench or something in it. A lot of these situations, you're just kind of hiding in the toolies, right? And it's a long day standing up, especially if you're hunting all day long. You're going to try to get the morning and evening in. Standing in knee deep water all day gets exhausting, right? So there's a couple different companies. We carry a few models of like a mud style Thule seat, right? It's just like a padded chair that you can stick down in the mud. It's got some like arms on it to keep from sinking too far in the mud, and it makes it a little bit more bearable to sit there the longer hours, right?
Yeah, and I would say it's definitely a must have if you're hunting any of our state refuges. You don't know what blind you're going to get the night before when you're packing, so I always bring mine with me.
Yeah, and do all the stores carry those now for the most part?
A number of them do. If not, we can get one sent over.
It's like a Thule seat or a mud seat. I know a lot of guys make them. I've seen Tim's over the years made a few, right?
Yeah, I've gotten lazy. I just buy them now.
So let's get into guns. I think that's probably the funnest thing to talk about, right? Let's talk about waterfowl guns. I think everyone probably has their own opinions of what they like. Tim, what's your go-to shotgun?
I am absolutely brutal on gear, and firearms are no different. They're just another tool in the shed for me. I mean, my guns have been boat oars, crutches, all kinds of various things throughout the course of the year. And so I like an over and under at times, and I certainly spend a lot of time shooting a semi as well.
What has always drawn you? I know you've always been an over-under guy for duck hunting. What's that about?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know. When I look back on the 25 shell rule is when I really started paying more attention to shooting an over and under. So it just kept me conscious of how many shells I had, and I knew I only had 2 shots. Yeah. Right. So conserving that extra shot if I'm 2 miles from the truck made a lot of sense.
So there's a story that's gone around Turner's. I've heard it a bunch of times. It involves you and a new over and under shotgun.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story? You showed up in the parking lot of where?
So I was actually 17 years old, working in the Anaheim store. My mom had to come in and pick this gun up for me. And so, like I said, I'm brutal on stuff, and I just like to get things out of the way. So I took that gun down to the blind, was hunting at the Salton Sea, and it was almost shoot time. I grabbed that thing by the barrel and pitched it out across the rocks and the sticks before I loaded it. And everybody's looking at me in awe. And when I went and picked it up, I had a dent in the rib, scratches in the stock, just pretty trashed. It looked like it was 5 or 6 years old from just a 10-second little toss. And I still shoot that gun. I've been shooting that gun for 45 plus years. It's had at least 30 coats of spray paint on it. It's just been down through the road, but it is.
It's a Browning, right? It's old Browning Satori. Well, the version of the story I heard is that you showed up with a new Browning Satori, and everyone was making fun of you for having a shiny new gun. And you said, "Well, I'll fix that," and you threw it across the rocks. Is the story I heard.
Any of it's possible. I've never had a problem picking up a can of spray paint and throwing it on there, though.
Yeah, that's easy. An easy way to rejuvenate an old gun. Kyle, what about you?
I've been running a Beretta 400 for the last 10 or 12 years now. Same thing. I'm pretty meticulous about most things in my life. For some reason, my waterfowl shotgun is not one of them. It's gone swimming, same thing. I've used it to push boats out of the mud and whatnot. But that gun has really proven itself, I think, over the last couple of years. I don't take care of it well, and it finally failed me this season. This last season, the plastic cap separated mid-hunt, which was a pretty interesting shot. But
the
plastic end cap, the nut that holds the whole forearm. I took the first shot of the morning and I watched it all go off into the distance. And then there was a couple more birds flying over, and I'm holding the whole fore end together, thinking about whether or not I'm going to take a second shot.
Did it work after that, or what happened?
I couldn't bring myself to do it, but I think $25 at Beretta, and I was back in business.
There you go. So you lost the cap only.
But that thing's probably got 10,000 rounds of waterfowl ammo through it. It's been indestructible for me.
Well, I can tell you from my opinion on guns, a lot of people, they see people shooting ducks and geese and they think it's easy because they're big birds, right? You look at doves and how fast they fly and how little they are, and they see a big old goose and they think, oh, I'm just going to stand up and shoot that thing. But you don't realize how fast those birds are moving. You don't realize the crazy angles in which you're shooting. You don't realize the position that you're in. That's usually, waist deep in mud and water, things like that, um, with heavy clothing on, things like that. It makes the shooting side a little bit tricky. And I think people underestimate it. And I've seen a lot of guys get really frustrated with their inability to make good shots. And then you'll see uh, guys that shoot a little better um, shooting their limit well before you get one or two birds down. So guns to me are super important, and I learned the hard way. I have a gun. It's a expensive Beretta over and under shotgun. I think I paid almost $5,000 for it when I bought it used, but I shoot this gun really well, and I've always have. That's why I bought it. Um, and I took it duck hunting because that's what I shot really well. It's the gun I used for everything. And Tim here, I told you about Kern when I went to Kern with Tim. We get up in the morning, get up, checked in, we walk for I don't know how many miles in a dirt road. Then we step off in the dark and start walking in the water, which was probably the first time I'd walked like that in the water with waders. And Tim's just like gone. I think he's like floating a bag of decoys behind him, and he's just like get moving in front of me, and I'm walking, trying to keep up, sludging through the mud, and probably a little less than waist deep water, and I had my shotgun broken half over my shoulder. And I don't know if I hit like a squirrel hole or what it was, but the next thing I know is I'm like on my knees in the water, and I I didn't swamp my waders that bad, but I was soaked.
Mm.
And I noticed when I fell into the ground, like your initial action is like to like put your hands down. I like speared the mud with my over under barrels. And Tim comes back and makes sure I'm okay and gets me up, and I'm like, man, that was terrible. I remember we finished walking to where we were gonna hunt, and I'm standing there for probably 10 minutes. I realized I have water in one of my pockets still. I'm like slapping water out of my pockets. But he's like, hey, we gotta check your gun. And he's like, there's probably mud in your barrels. Let me see it. And I hand him my $5,000 Beretta, and he breaks it open, and he puts the barrels in the water and starts swishing water through my gun like this to make sure my barrels were clear. But yeah, duck hunting can be really hard on guns. So I learned after that to get something a little cheaper. So I shoot like a Benelli. I've shot a lot of different guns. I've been through the A400. There's been a bunch of different ones. Great gun, super soft shooting. The ability to shoot 3.5-inch shells, we'll get into a little bit, but traditionally a lot of stuff was 2 3/4 and 3 inch. With the Benelli Super Black Eagles and then the Beretta A400s, we see the ability to shoot those 12 gauge 3.5-inch shells, which a lot of guys like to do. So I've always gravitated towards either a Benelli or Beretta. I happen to like really flat guns. I don't like a stepped rib. So I shoot older Benellis. Like I have a couple old ones that are my go-to waterfowl guns. Um, I love shooting my over and under, but I found that in certain cases, especially I shoot a lot of pit blinds, they're really awkward to break them open and load them in a pit. So I've gravitated more towards a semi-auto myself. And depending on what we're doing, let's get into ammo, right? Ammo is kind of a good history lesson. As long as I've been waterfowl hunting, it's always been steel, but I can say that it was kind of new. Like it was newer. The idea was newer, shooting steel. Kind of like shooting steel for doves is kind of newer now, but it's been that way for years. Tim, I'd imagine growing up, you shot plenty of ducks with lead in this state, right?
Just brings a tear to my eye. All us old guys out there, yeah, shooting lead was incredible.
What was the change? Do you remember what year it changed?
I'm gonna guess it was. I don't remember the exact year, but I would say early 80, mid 80, somewhere in there. But the rule of thumb is that you would shoot 2 sizes larger in steel than you did in lead when it first came out. And steel loads back then versus now there's a huge difference. They're so much faster now than they were back then. Steel back then was still a little faster than lead, but it didn't hold a pattern as well. And so you would shoot, if you were shooting lead fours, well, you'd start shooting steel twos. And that was just how we did it back then. And as steel has evolved and things have changed and there's other ammunition that you can use besides steel, I've gone from shooting ducks with fours to most of my shots are 25 yards or less. I shoot sixes now. Yeah. I get more pellets. I get a denser pattern. I like that much more. I kill a lot of birds quicker than I do using larger shots. So
85. So 1985. So for those of you who don't know, in 1985, this is federally, right, in the whole country, they went away from allowing the use of lead shot to take waterfowl, to hunt waterfowl. So they had to go to steel. And when they first went to steel, there wasn't a lot of steel out there in the world, I'd imagine. So they just started loading steel shotgun loads. And what they found over time is steel has less mass or weight than lead. So they needed to get it a little faster to get the energy up. That didn't happen for a long time. I think everyone kind of complained about the lack of lethality of steel. And I hate shooting steel. I try to find other things like tungsten. There's been all kinds of things, heavy shot. There's some bismuth. I mean, there's been a lot of research and development into, a better steel. It's out there, guys. Look at, things like heavy steel, heavy shot from Federal. That they kind of own all that now. And then Kent Fast Steel, they have a couple of different things like Plus, they have tungsten, they have bismuth. There's a lot of options for people to get a little bit better quality ammunition out there. You're putting a lot of effort into going out here hunting and getting there. You don't want to skimp. It's kind of like going fishing with crappy fishing line, right? It's the least common denominator, but it's super important. So swing by the Turner stores, talk to the guys. They'll point you in the right direction of the right ammunition to use. But like Tim was saying, there's a lot of options. What we didn't talk a lot about, now that it has to be all non-toxic, instead of saying steel, we'll call it non-toxic because there is other options. That chase for speed and things like that, chase of getting something that's more deadly, you saw the 3.5-inch shell introduced, right? So I don't know, that's probably more recent than anything. It's probably was in the mid 90s. I think we started seeing that 12 gauge 3.5-inch shell. And it was kind of rare. I remember Mossberg was real big on it in the beginning, and then you started seeing it in other guns. And I feel like as an ammo buyer now, I feel like 3.5 was a big deal, and I feel like it's tapered off now. I feel like not as many people that are shooting ducks care. Guys that shoot geese still are looking for everything they can to knock those big geese down, but I'd say 3-inch is probably our mainstay. Um, so guys, in shotguns, you want 12 gauge shotguns for the most part. We can talk a little bit about, I know some guys that and gals that have gravitated towards 20 and 28 gauges, but the mainstay here is going to be 12 gauge shotguns with 3-inch shells, steel shot. If you're shooting ducks, from what I've seen here, a number 3 shot is the most common. That's probably our number one seller by far, is 3-inch number 3s. If you look up in the better part of the state, in NorCal, those guys in Sac Valley up in there, they eat up a lot of 3-inch 3s, 3-inch 4s. But 3-inch 3s by far nationally is the number one duck load sold. So you really can't go wrong. Where you see some guys doing some different things, like with 20 gauges. Obviously, kids can shoot 20 gauges. They do a 20 gauge 3-inch 3s. When you're going down to 20 gauge, some people may want to shoot 4s and get a little bit more higher pellet count. But where you do see 20 gauges growing is I've seen some of these guys that want a lighter gun that's quicker to get up and get deployed, if you will. Where A lot of guys are hunting blinds or you're hunting layout blinds and you got a big gun on your lap. And to get your gun from your lap up to your shoulder shooting, having a lot lighter gun, it definitely gets you there quicker. I didn't realize it until I went to Missouri a few years ago, and I went on one of those the late season snow geese deals where there's you could use electronic calls, there's no limits, and you don't have to have a plug in your gun. Um, and these guys told me to bring my 10 gauge, so I have a 10 gauge. So I had a 10 gauge with an extension tube on it, and I don't know if you've probably shot a Browning Gold 10. I have a Browning Gold 10 with an extension tube on it. And you get that thing full of 10 gauge shells and you're laying on your back in a layout blind and you got to get that gun up when they say go. It ain't easy, bro. It is brutal trying. And I found myself having a really hard time just getting the gun up and on my shoulder and being able to shoot. You have to like put it on your leg, I found out. And then like when they say go, you like kick your knee and throw the gun up and get some momentum because it's so damn heavy. So having a nice light gun, there is some guys that like doing that. I was talking to an old SCI friend. She has a club up in Idaho now, and their hunting is phenomenal. And they shoot a lot of 28 gauge. She called me for 28 gauge steel, and I'm like, Lisa, what are you doing with 28 gauge steel? And she just got this great property up there, and they like the soft shooting recoil, and they're shooting ducks at 15 yards in the decoys. Like they don't need a lot. But us here running around the refuges, I think 12 gauge, 3-inch threes, get good ammo, go out there and spend the extra money on heavy metal or heavy shot or Kent Fast Steel Plus is the new one, I think. But that's an important part of the package, right? Tim, what are you shooting for ammo now?
Um, I'm probably the opposite of what you just said.
So much. That's why
I- I typically shoot the cheapest ammo I can find.
And that's what happens. I talk to a lot of guys that say that, but it's because they're shooting 2, 3, 4 cases of ammo a year. Where guys like Kyle, he's probably lucky to shoot a case a year, right? Because we don't have the opportunity. We don't have a fancy duck club like you got.
We don't get any invites either, but
One of the things I've found is when I was going up to that club many years ago, there's a lot of teal, and I just took some steel sevens one day, just some dove loads, just to see how that would work, and just dropping birds left and right with it. And so, as I've gone on from that point, I shoot a 2 3/4 inch number 6 duck load that's moving at 1,400 feet a second, and I'm shooting everything, like I said, less than 30 yards for sure, and just rolling birds.
Yeah, and that's what helps. It works. It's all about how far you're shooting birds, and I went to Canada a couple of years ago. It's probably been 8 years now, and there's this hunt that one of our factories puts on. It was at the time it was a Bushnell hunt, and John Vaca, who you probably know John Vaca well, he's the guy that really launched Final Approach and a lot of the big waterfowl lines. He's a epic guide, one of the more popular, just awesome waterfowl hunters. And they did this hunt with him up in Manitoba every year, and I'd always heard about it. I always wanted to go, and funny story about it. I was really looking forward to it, and I hunt geese a lot down here. Hunting Canada geese is unique. Like Kyle, you guys hunt snow geese, you hunt ducks, you do all these things. When I started going out there to Arizona, you start hunting honkers. It's different because you got to learn to call honkers. You have to honker decoys. And you don't really use that anywhere else over here unless you get way up in NorCal. So I learned to call and learned to decoy birds and things out here. But I was going on this hunt to Manitoba, and I called the guy who invited me and I said, "Hey, I'm trying to figure out what to bring. Like, are we dry field hunting? Do I need to bring waders and blah 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 blah." Going through it all, and he's like, "Yeah, you need we're dry field hunting. Blah blah blah." I said, "What about my calls? Should I bring my calls? Like, they're gonna call, right? Like, it's a guided deal. Like, I'm gonna just leave it. Oh, I'm like, I'm hunting with John Vaca. He's like the guy. Like, I'm not gonna go blow my freaking toot my goose call with the John Vaca laying in a layout blind next to me." And he's like, yeah, oh yeah, you don't need your calls. I go, yeah, I'm gonna leave them. So the next day, I'm like finishing packing up, and I'm got everything going. I go, you know what? I'm gonna bring my calls, and I threw my calls in my bag, and I go to the airport and fly to Canada. You know, flying guns to Canada can be challenging. We get through all that, and we meet the group of guys at the airport in like a minivan thing, and we're all meeting each other. It's all other buyers and industry people, and I'm like, "Where's John Vaca at?" Like the guy, and they're like, "Oh." John got derailed on Cabela's grand opening, so he's not going to be here. And I was like, well, that's a bummer. Like that kind of sucks. I really want to meet that guy. I heard all these stories of guys that hunted with him. So we get set up in the, van, and we get to the lodge and check in. And the next morning, uh, we go out to go hunting, and they have this awesome trailer that's all final approach wrapped, and the guides drive us out to the area, and we get out of the trucks, and they open the door of the enclosed trailer and just start kicking all the full body decoys out, and throw like 6 layout blinds out, and they throw some cases of shells out. And I had my blind bag with my stuff in it, my calls, and I'm like, who's guiding? And they're like, "Oh, we're not guiding. We're the bear guides. We just brought your stuff. Like John usually guides." And I'm like, "Well," I look at the group of guys I know. I'm like, "Well, who's calling?" And they're like, "We don't even have any calls. We don't have a call geese." I'm like, "Well, thank God I brought my calls." So I'm like, now what do I do? We're out. I'm in a field in the dark I've never been into. Right? Imagine this. Never been there. I'm in Canada, Manitoba. We have a trailer full of decoys on the ground now and 6 layout blinds. And the guys are like, all right, we'll be back around 9:30. And I go, hey guys, like, where do the birds come from? How about we start start with that? And the guy looks around, and he's like, kind of that way.
Oh,
I
man.
go, okay, what's over there? Like, oh, there's water. They roost on the water over there, and then they come over this way. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. And we set up decoys and set the blinds up. And luckily, I had my calls, and we had a pretty epic 5 days of hunting. But man, if I didn't bring my calls, I would have been in big trouble. But what reminded me of that story is when they kicked all the crap out of that trailer, they kick out the, I'm not going to name a brand, the crappiest 12 gauge 3 inch or 2 3/4 inch steel shot, like number twos. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we're up here hunting these big honkers with 2 3/4 inch, like number twos. Like, what a, like, I was literally upset because I was used like, oh, I need my 3.5 inch, BBs for shooting honkers. We pummeled those geese with 2 3/4 inch number twos, with the cheap, crappy, nothing super fast. But when birds are in your decoys and you're shooting them, it doesn't matter. I agree with you. When you're shooting them like that, like it's supposed to be, but sometimes you can't finish birds like that, and that's where that little bit bigger, better ammo comes into play.
But to your point, you don't have to shoot the same ammo everywhere you go, right? If you're past shooting ducks down here, you're not going to want to shoot a 2 3/4 6 like Tim at his nice club up there,
Yeah.
right? You just kind of have to adapt to whatever refuge you're hunting at, what time of year it is, what kind of birds you're going to see. If I go out early season and I know there's a ton of teal, I'm probably going to shoot fives. You know what I mean? But you just got to be flexible.
Well, one of the last things to go over, Gunnar, do you have any questions yet coming up? Is there a newbie sitting there?
Yeah.
Anything we're leaving out?
What would you guys say? Obviously, you said like it just depends, but obviously, I think it was three you guys said is just the standard across the board.
I think threes and twos.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of guys that are realizing though that you don't have to shoot 3.5s. Number one, right? It's nice. There's a lot of really cool loads in a 3.5, but there's also a lot of guys like Tim and myself that I think are starting to realize you can go back to shooting fours, whether it be threes, fours. You get into some of the technical loads with bismuth and tungsten. You can go to fives and sixes and see a pretty big difference.
For sure, for sure. Well, I think one of the most important things to talk about when it comes to waterfowl hunting that is probably the most stoic things that you see with waterfowl hunting is the calling, right? We haven't talked a lot about that. And I know there's a lot to get into about that. But I think that's the thing that probably scares people the most. I think people can navigate a lot of different things, but when it comes to calling, whether you're calling ducks, you're calling geese, it's a tricky thing to learn. I hear a lot of guys that love hunting. I've hunted with a lot of guys that think they know how to call, and it's terrible. And I
How do you
hate.
tell your best friend to stop?
You take his call away from him.
I've had this situation, and it's pretty bad when my wife knows when someone doesn't know how to call. Like I've had my wife look at me in the blind when there's some other guy gets on his goose call. Like, what the heck's going on? But it's nothing to be intimidated about. They're really the thing to do now. The internet's crazy. There's so much stuff you can do. Go on YouTube and learn. Um, but I'd say starting out for guys that are going to hunt ducks, right? Let's start with easy button. I think that there's a couple key things that guys need that are going to get into hunting. And it doesn't mean they need to go and buy a call and go sit at Wister and start blowing that call right away. You can go out there and hunt without a call. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I would recommend go down to Turner's, get a simple double reed, 10 mallard call, and a whistle, right? Like a simple like all in one, or they call them 6-in-1 or whatever whistles. You could do a pintail whistle, you can do a widgeon whistle, you can do teal peeps, and there's tons of videos. I learned a lot from Phil Robertson, who everyone knows now, but when I met him here in the Turner stores years ago, a super neat guy. He was so honest when he came in and did seminars, and I thought he'd come in. It was before they were the marketing machine the Robertson family is now, right? He came and did seminars in our stores, and I was actually a little frustrated as a store manager at the time because I was hoping he was going to sell a bunch of stuff. But he was like, "It doesn't matter what camo you need, just black. You can wear black, and I don't care what kind of duck call you buy. Just buy one that sounds like a duck." And I'm just going, "Come on, man, you're supposed to be selling stuff here." But he was just so honest and straightforward. But he kind of started that old whistle style. Call like that 7-in-1, I think was it. I forget what they call it, but that style whistle can go a long ways. You can get online and watch videos of him. There's a video he does called Art of Commanding Ducks. It's pretty interesting to kind of learn how to call ducks in a system. And I've learned from that and put that into play in hunting and testing it out. And um, there was a lot of good wisdom in that stuff. So I recommend getting on YouTube and learning how and when to call and what your call is supposed to sound like, and um, get outdoors and blow on a call. It doesn't sound the same in your car. Like by all means, practice wherever you can, but um, get a call that's easy to blow that you're comfortable with. There's no doubt you're going to go through a bunch of them, right? It's like a CCW holsters, right? I bought 30 different holsters looking for the right one. I have a pile of duck calls. I give them all to my kids when they're little, right? That I just don't like. You're just going to unfortunately go through that. But find a call that's easy for you to blow and make sound good. Um, and I'd look at doing a whistle, the easy whistles. It's kind of simple. You could kill a lot of ducks with the whistle. Um, when you get out hunting. I know there's times a year when calls are more effective, and call you sometimes, like if you blow on a call and the ducks don't do what you want them to do a couple times and you're set up, I'd put that call away, right? I think Tim, you taught me that originally. You're not certain times of year, you're not a big caller. Like you don't go out there and rip at them, right?
No, and I think that has to do with just where you're at, the time of the year for the migration. And it's different, right? You see a flight of birds coming and you want to talk to them. They don't respond. Well, did I do something wrong? Am I concealed properly? And then all of a sudden you'll grab the next group and they'll come hooking right in, and you start scratching your head going, okay, after 60 years, I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's weird. I've had days I can't. I'll never forget one of the better days I've had out there on the river. We're set up. I was the only guy calling. I think I had 10 or 11 hunters, and it's just typical morning. Birds start flying up the river, and I start on them pretty hard. Nothing's working. Then I get a group, and they're just one goose is just honking, and I go, you know what? I'm gonna try that. I'm just gonna honk back at it, and I honk back at it, and then they'd honk, I'd honk, and I just like after the third one, they just turned and came burning in, kill a couple out of that group. Same thing. I just started just clucking back at them, real subtle clucks that morning. And for whatever reason, that's what they wanted that day. Other days, you got to grind them on to the deck, right? But sometimes it's just little subtle things. I've noticed with ducks, a lot of times with ducks, so many people, it's such a thing to go duck hunting, right? Just be like, rah, 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 just hammer it on your duck call, right? But so many times you'll see birds working you. Like if you're in the right spot, you picked a good area, you got a couple decoys out, you're concealed. If the duck's circling over you, it kind of wants to go there already. So a lot of times you can just be quiet and let it happen. And sometimes you can coax them a little bit with a little bit of like a widgeon whistle or a little pintail peep, anything like that, and teal peeps. And you just kind of, I like my favorite thing now I've learned, again, going back to Phil Robertson, is that mallard drake call. I blow like that mallard drake call, and I mean, I go to that, and I finish birds all the time just with that little bit of mallard drake call. So I'd highly recommend that. Kyle?
No, I was just going to say, I think when you're learning, less is best.
Yeah, and just
100%.
figure it out. Watch what's working. Listen to guys, and we talked a little bit about. I was talking to Gunner yesterday about having people help learn, find a mentor, and that's hard. That's why we're doing this, because not everyone can find a mentor to take them out there hunting. So we're trying to share information to get people excited about going and get people to pursue that information and get you out there. But one of the things is, it's like when I went with Tim back to Kern years ago, I had a card and he didn't, right? So there's guys, I'd imagine there's plenty of internet forums. I'm Kyle, you're probably up to speed on like the refuge, or what's the ones here?
There's still a couple of forums, but a lot of it's just moved to social media now.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be opposed to putting the word out that you got a good card if you're new, and you'll probably find someone that will take advantage of you and want to come use your card, and you'll be able to learn from. But that's a good way to get in front of people. If you live up north, you'll probably find plenty of people, because there's a lot of hunters up there. And if you get down here, like reach out to people on your social media and let them know. You never know. And it's, you can search out. There's a couple of different forums. I forget the name. I think it's called the Refuge. There's a couple of different ones. I know Arizona has its own. But you can be like, hey, I got number 2 for Worcester on opening day, and I'm clueless. And the guys will be like, hey, you're my best friend now. Because you can take, I think at Worcester, you can take 3-4 people with you, something like
Four
that.
now.
Four now. So it's pretty, there's opportunity there to get someone who knows what they're doing, because there is a lot of things you have to figure out. Hopefully today we answered a lot of those things. I encourage you to do the research, jump online, watch YouTube videos, do a lot of reading. There's a lot of stuff now with the internet that we didn't have. Like, it wasn't a thing growing up to have the information that's available to us. One of the really neat things that I encourage people to get involved with, we touched on it earlier, is the youth hunts. You know, even if you want to hunt too, I get it. But if you're new and you have young kids, there's a great way to meet great people. There's a couple different places you can go. California Waterfowl Association has some youth hunts they put on every year with the state. You can find them at calwaterfowl.org. Again, that's CAL waterfowl.org. Look up on their website, look up youth hunts, and you'll see a huge schedule of youth hunts they do. You have to kind of draw or put your name in to get those, because there's only so many spots on each of those. And then the big one that I'm involved with every year is the Cibola Youth Hunt out in Cibola, Arizona. That's on the Colorado River close to Blythe. And you can find that by going to the Arizona Game and Fish Outdoor Skills Network website. Just Google search Arizona Game and Fish Outdoor Skills Newsletter, and you will find information on, they do a lot. Arizona's pretty cool, as is California. They do a lot of different workshops and things for kids and adults, frankly. But if you scroll through, you'll see all kinds of things like fishing days they have, where It's camps to teach kids how to get outdoors and fish and shoot and hunt. They do a lot of big game camps, but if you look in December, it's usually December 12th. This year, it's December 12th, 13th, and 14th. You can go to that website and sign your kid up starting October 1st. They bring in around 30 or 40 kids and they do like dinners and breakfast. It's all free. It's a super neat opportunity to get your kids out and to also meet people that are mentoring your kids on these hunts that you can then probably get information from or make friends. One of the things that's neat about hunting, and I don't care if it's archery, bow hunting, big game, or rifle hunting, or in this case, waterfowl hunting. But one of the things I always have enjoyed about this industry is there's a lot of really good people and everyone's really cool. Like I'm going on an elk hunt tomorrow and I was out sighting my bow in yesterday, double checking everything. And just in that short time, I met a couple guys at the range that I became friends with. Like everyone's really cool. We're having good conversations, talking about different things. Um, People, for the most part, are super cool. They're helpful. So reach out to people, go into your Turners and see if any of the guys hunt there. I think all of our stores have waterfowl hunters and in them, especially in NorCal. There's quite a few, but I encourage you to do what you can. Get your kids outdoors. There's a lot of opportunities. You can go to California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they have youth hunt opportunities on their website that you can put your kids in for. I'm sure Ducks Unlimited, the Pacific Flyaway chapter, I'm sure has their own opportunities. But I encourage you, get your kids out there. You get out there, you'll have a great time. Thank you for joining us today on the Turner's Outdoorsman podcast. We'll get you next time.